They protect us. They defend us. They help us in times of need. But they're being destroyed from within.
Last year saw more Army suicides than any year on record.
Day
Our son was just one of thousands of veterans that this country has lost to suicide.
after day
only to die here at home in their sleep.
after day.
He then used a pistol to take his own life.
There is a hidden enemy at work,
It's got to stop.
and it's hiding in plain sight. The most dangerous enemy is the one you never suspect.
I was in the dollar store and he called me and said, I don't want to upset you, but I want you to know Michael's okay. But he tried to kill himself. And he put 2 IVs in his arms and he bled out in the bathtub. And he was drawing in his blood on the walls. He didn't even know he was committing suicide.
So his cognizance, his reason, was already usurped by these pills. You know, they take away who you are. And he wasn't the same.
We had the hospital check him and they found at least 9 drugs in his system. And they're just the ones they tested for.
They were giving my son drugs that had black box warnings, said, if you're under 25 and you're taking this pill, your risk of suicide is going up 50%. Risk of suicide. But they were still giving the pills.
Psychiatrists claim their drugs save lives, but they rarely discuss the serious risk of suicide. Why don't they? Because those black box warnings for 18 to 24-year-olds, that's the age range of nearly half of all deployed American soldiers. And yet, the use of psychiatric drugs in the U.S. military has soared 76% since 2001. That includes antidepressants that psychiatrists hand out to soldiers to prevent suicide.
There's no evidence that drugging stops suicide. The reason I'm saying this is because it is alleged that if somebody is suicidal, you should medicate them. Except there's no evidence that medicating somebody who's suicidal is going to prevent suicide. There's substantial evidence that many drugs actually promote suicide.
And last year, within the DoD, there were 349 suicides among military personnel. That's almost 1 a day, literally 1 a day.
That's more suicides than were killed in combat. And the military is very concerned. It's a problem that has echoed through the halls of government.
One of the biggest concerns I have about the military is the inordinate number of suicides that have taken place among active duty and those who've left the military.
3 years ago, I got Congress to hold hearings to examine the relationship between suicide and increased use of medications, and there was a direct parallel. The amount of suicides were increasing proportionate to the amount of medications being introduced.
So, do antidepressants cause suicide? Of course they do.
So don't blame the soldiers. Don't blame the military as a whole. Blame the corruption of the military by the psychiatric industry that is peddling false, dangerous medicine, that is peddling a kind of modern day quackery, calling it treatment but delivering suicide.
And as bad as it is in active duty, veterans have it far worse. They're killing themselves at a rate of 22 a day, 1 every 65 minutes. But do psychiatrists ever consider stopping the drugging? No. Instead, it's an all-out assault. With all the ways psychiatric drugs can react on your body, how do psychiatrists counteract a side effect from a drug they've given you?
I can't sleep at night. The stomach pains are worse than
They don't take you off the drug. They'll either raise the dosage, which can cause more side effects, or they'll add another drug, which will add even more, then another, and another.
It was clear right away that they really had no idea what anything that they were giving me was really going to do. And they said, this drug may not work. You may need a different one. This one may need a higher dose. This one may need a lower dose.
This practice is so common, they've even got a name for it: polypharmacy. And here's a little known fact. Many of these drugs have never been tested in combination, which makes those taking the drugs little more than guinea pigs.
It's just a grand, crazy, insane pharmaceutical roulette that's being conducted at the expense of our nation's sons and daughters, really. The battlefield is safer than psychiatry. Do you understand that? Statistically, you are less likely to be shot by an enemy than to be killed by a pharmaceutical drug. That's the truth about psychiatry. It's the deepest betrayal of a human being to kill them while claiming you're treating them, to call it medicine and deliver death.
And it's all so needless, because there is hope, and it doesn't involve psychiatric treatment. Look around, and unfortunately, you'll find a world saturated with psychiatry. But there are safe, effective, and workable solutions, and they can be found.
The main word for soldiers, and not only soldiers, but anybody suffering from any type of so-called mental illness, is that there's hope. That there's hope out there, there's solutions out there, things are available for you to get your life back, to not have suicidal thoughts, to not end your life, and it does not include psychiatric drugs.
There is a way to solve this. It's to get rid of the drugs and start treating soldiers like human beings, not lab rats. That's the solution.
The vets who get over their war wounds do it on their own, do it with friends, do it with colleagues, do it in support groups. They're doing it separate and distinct from the medical intervention.
And yet, psychiatry's reach today goes well beyond the military. It is just as J.R. Reese planned. Psychiatric treatment tested out and advanced within the military, spilling out into every nook and cranny of civilian life. Psychiatry is currently an international $330 billion a year industry. It promised help. It delivers pain, damage, and death. The hidden enemy has now been revealed. What happens next is up to all of us. Psychiatrists will tell you it's the return of your mental illness and that you need to get back on your drugs. That isn't true. This is withdrawal, just like with any street drug.
Not only is it dangerous to be on these drugs, it's also very dangerous to come off of them. In fact, in many cases, the suicides happen immediately after someone stops taking an antidepressant drug. So if you do that, make sure you do it in a way where you have medical supervision and you have a support system in place so you can get off of those drugs safely.
Children are a huge target for psychiatrists. 1.9 million of them have a parent in the military, and 1 million have had a parent deploy. And when you're a little kid worried about mommy or daddy, that makes you fair game.
The numbers of children who have been put on drugs within the military TRICARE system is astounding.
How many drugs are these children being forced to take now?
Whatever it is, it's high. According to a study in the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, 91% of all kids visiting a child psychiatrist come away with a psychiatric drug. Is this really what we want for our children? You have to wonder why, with all this failure, psychiatrists keep hurting people, drugging them, addicting them, creating violence and suicide. it is for the most disgraceful of reasons. Psychiatrists say that disorders like PTSD can't be cured. Instead, they claim they need to be managed with drugs for the rest of your life. It's bad medicine, but great for the bank account.
Once you label somebody and you start medicating them, over the life of that person, it's going to cost the government about $1.5 million to provide these medications and treatment.
There's a lot of money to be made here. There's a lot of money to be made by the companies that are producing these drugs.
Profit is the only conceivable motive for all of these psychiatric drugs in the military.
Taxpayers are footing the bill for this travesty of medicine. These psychiatric drugs that promote suicides, you're paying for them.
So why do psychiatrists hand out drugs at such record levels? Because drugging people is a lot easier than actually helping them. And because of this explosion of psychiatric drugging, psychiatry has developed a very close relationship with drug companies.